お待たせいたしました。お時間となりましたので、ただいまより第3回日本アフリカビジネスフォーラム JABF2021 セッション2アフリカの食料増産を開会いたします。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。本フォーラムは日本語、英語、フランス語の音声にて配信しております。プルダウンメニューから本日の日付とご希望の言語を選択してご視聴ください。はじめに、農林水産省大臣官房審議官松本正夫様より開会のご挨拶を頂戴いたします。松本様、お願いいたします。
My name is Masao Matsumoto, Deputy Director General for International Affairs, Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fishery of Japan. Greeting from Japan, and this is my great honor to make opening remarks on this occasion of the South Japan African Business Forum. I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude for your participation. I would like to commend the efforts of the African Development Bank as the External Representation Office and the African Diplomatic Corps in Tokyo for organizing this forum. This session 2 is dedicated to Feed Africa, which is one of the high fives, the African Development Bank's top priorities. The number of people suffering from hunger and undernutrition is still increasing in Africa. This has been exacerbated by the impact of COVID-19 on supply chains and the regional economies. At the same time, with the population booming, agricultural production needs to be increased substantially in Africa. However, because of the population growth outpaces agricultural production growth, food imports are expected to increase. This is one of the major challenges for ensuring food security in the region. There is a need to build sustainable and productive food systems, which are also resilient to future vulnerabilities. In order to establish such sustainable and productive food system, it is effective to promote innovation, and it is expected that variety of entities, including small and medium-sized enterprises and startups companies, will participate in that challenge. One example of such innovation is the promotion of digitalization in agriculture to enhance the production capacity of the food system. In this regard, there exist emerging opportunities for business with Africa, making use of advanced technologies and know-how of Japanese private sectors. Discussion at this session are also useful for the UN Food System Summit, which is scheduled to be held in September this year. Since 2014, our ministry has been supporting the overseas business of Japanese food companies in order to promote the establishment of food value chain globally, including in Africa. The government of Japan holds the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD, once every 3 years. The private sector participated officially as a partner for the first time at the last conference in 2019. The Agricultural Working Group of the African Business Council presented its proposal to establish an enhanced food value chain, which includes utilization of digital technology, to organizing small and medium-sized farmers, and purchasing agricultural materials and selling their products jointly. We are proceeding with demonstration projects in Mozambique and Senegal with a view to present the progress at TICAD 8 to be held in Tunisia next year. This initiative has the potential to bring about a leapfrog phenomenon through development of small-scale digital infrastructure in areas where farmers are not well organized and do not have connection to well-developed distribution system. This project is expected to accelerate the increase in farmers' incomes and the development of local economies. We are committed to support such efforts. In response to the growing interest in the SDGs and call for the realization of sustainable food system, our ministry formulated a new strategy titled Measures for the Achievement of Decarbonization and Resilience with Innovation in May this year. This strategy aims for transforming the behavior of stakeholders and creating innovation in order to achieve a balance between increasing productivity and sustainability in agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. So specific targets in this strategy includes achieving carbon neutral and increasing organic agricultural production in Japan. This Japanese policy challenge may not be directly applicable to the other regions. In transforming food system, each country may formulate their own strategy to tackle the sustainability challenge according to socio-economic and climate condition of each country. There exists no one-size-fits-all solution. But in Africa, Japan can make variety of contribution in cooperation towards sustainable food system, including the digitization of agriculture and the reduction of food waste. Subsequently, the panel discussion will be held with the participation of representatives of the World Bank, African governments, and companies who are actively working for the development of the agriculture and food sector in Africa. Participants are expected to share knowledge of their countries or organization and discuss the realization of a sustainable food system and the transfer of technology and know-how of private sectors. I hope great success in today's session. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.
松本様、ありがとうございました。続きまして、エチオピア農林水産大臣、オマール・フセイン閣下より開会のご挨拶を頂戴いたします。フセイン閣下、お願いいたします。
Thank you so much. Excellencies, distinguished ambassadors, honorable private business leaders, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to me to attend this valuable business forum, virtual discussions on prioritizing game-changing solutions in action in order to promote African development. I note that this forum, which is entitled as the Third Japan-African Business Forum, JABF 2021, especially aimed to ensure a better future for African through, number one, providing the participants up-to-date information on the African economy and the business environment. Second, appealing directly and effectively to key stakeholders for further engagement in African business, and finally supporting the African private sector, including small and micro enterprises and the startups, to build a close relationship with Japanese private sectors, has inspired me to attend the forum to enhance shared vision in the collaborations. To that end, as you may know, Ethiopia is a signatory of Agenda 2063, Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations Agenda 2013, as well as other African regional initiatives to accelerate holistic growth commitment in the Ethiopian 10-year macroeconomic plans that can help realize all these targets. As part of the SDGs, we are in the process of developing the Ethiopian food system and the other inclusive and the sustainable development programs is a context with our reality, which highly demands the engagement of the private sector for common benefits. And also the overall economic transformational agendas that have been taking place in our country includes the development of agro-industrial parks, which deals with food value chain systems, rural electrification, in which we can come up with the rural energy supply, infrastructure development of the agriculture sector, such as warehouse, livestock marketing center, agro-commodity exchange centers, and digital agriculture development, which includes smart farming and the blockchain, could be the major ones. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, from these and other upcoming dialogues and discussions, we expect to refine the game-changing business solutions that could address possible trade-offs. We are looking forward to receiving all national and the global business partners for the potential business opportunity along the entire food supply and the value chains, And also, we would like to inform all partners that the Ethiopian government have availed a large area of potential agro-investment farmlands in suitable agroecologies of the country. Finally, I am grateful to the organizers of this third forum, with a special thanks goes to the government of Japan and African Development Bank for making these intergenerational and historical footprint initiations leading to prosperous Africa. Thank you so much, and I'll be in touch.
オマール・フセイン閣下、ありがとうございました。続きましてパネルディスカッションに移らせていただきます。モデレーターはアフリカ開発銀行農業人材社会開発担当の副総裁代行戸田敦子様です。戸田様は農村農業金融のエキスパートであり、アフリカ開発銀行入行前も20年近くにわたってアジアとアフリカの農村開発と金融に携わってこられました。ナイジェリアでは国際農業開発基金のカントリーディレクターとして農村開発のための支援を行われていました。本日はアフリカ開発銀行の本部があるコートジボワールからご参加いただいております。ここからは戸田様、お願いいたします。
Thank you so much. And it was very exciting to hear Minister Matsumoto and also His Excellent Minister Umar Hussein with regards to some of the opportunities. And I really hope that today the panel will bring out some opportunities when it comes to the collaboration between Japan and Africa. We are delighted today to have an excellent, eminent panel of speakers. And I would like to start off by introducing Mr. Malik Ndao, the Permanent Secretary of the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Equipment of Senegal. We're very happy to have you here, Mr. Ndao. Please do keep your presentation to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Bonjour, merci beaucoup, madame.
Merci beaucoup.
Très bien, on m'entend bien. Merci à tout le monde de m'avoir donné la parole. Je crois que tout le monde m'entend.
Yes, we hear you very well. Thank you.
Très bien, merci. Très bien. Je suis Papa Malik Ndao, secrétaire général du ministère de l'Agriculture et de l'Équipement rural du Sénégal. Je représente le professeur Moussa Baldé, qui est le ministre de l'Agriculture et de l'Équipement rural du Sénégal, empêché aujourd'hui parce qu'il est actuellement en réunion hebdomadaire du Conseil des ministres que le président, son Excellence Michel Macky Sall, préside tous les mercredis. Donc, c'est en son nom que je participe et je remercie toutes les autorités japonaises, Excellences les ambassadeurs et Mesdames, Messieurs les ministres qui participent à ce panel de haut niveau. Donc, c'est un honneur pour moi de venir livrer une intervention de M. le ministre, le professeur Moussa Baldé, et qui va s'intituler sur 3 axes: la situation de l'agriculture sénégalaise, mais aussi en deuxième axe, nous aurons les défis de notre agriculture, et enfin, en troisième point, les opportunités et les atouts du Sénégal pour attirer les investisseurs. Comme vous le savez, le plan Sénégal émergent, initié par son Excellence le président de la République Macky Sall, fait de l'agriculture le moteur de la croissance qui se doit inclusive. L'ambition qui sous-tend ce plan Sénégal émergent est de faire du Sénégal un pays émergent grâce, entre autres, à une agriculture productive, compétitive, diversifiée, durable et pourvoyeuse d'emplois décents. Cette agriculture souhaitée a les fonctions suivantes: nourrir au mieux et durablement sur une base endogène les populations, tirer profit des avantages comparatifs du commerce international, sécuriser et augmenter les revenus des ruraux, procurer des emplois agricoles et non agricoles décents, gérer durablement les ressources naturelles, améliorer l'état nutritionnel des populations, favoriser un pilotage du secteur basé sur la transparence, la performance et la participation, l'équité et le contrôle citoyen, et enfin accompagner la mise en place des organisations interprofessionnelles agricoles fortes et autonomes. Pour réaliser ces objectifs, mesdames et messieurs, excellences, et dans le cadre de la résilience face à la COVID-19, notre gouvernement et le ministère de l'Agriculture et l'équipement rural du Sénégal a mis en place un programme agricole pour la souveraineté alimentaire durable 2021-2023 qui définit 4 axes stratégiques. Le premier axe, amélioration et sécurisation de la base productive. Le deuxième axe, accroissement durable de la productivité et de la production agricole. Le troisième axe, renforcement du dispositif des services agricoles en matière d'appui à la production. Et le quatrième axe, l'amélioration de la gouvernance du secteur agricole. Vous me permettez, mesdames et messieurs, de vous rappeler que d'importantes réalisations ont été effectuées depuis 2012 sous le magistère de son Excellence le Président Macky Sall, notamment en matière d'hydraulique, accès à l'eau pour les exploitants agricoles, de qualité et quantité des semences mises à la disposition des producteurs, de mécanisation et d'amélioration technologique, d'encadrement des producteurs, d'accès au financement. Toutes ces réalisations ont permis une augmentation significative des rendements et de la production des principales filières, ainsi qu'une amélioration des revenus des ruraux. Bien sûr, il reste des défis à relever dans les domaines de l'accès à l'eau, dans les domaines des infrastructures, malgré les efforts consentis, mais aussi dans le domaine d'une productivité encore faible. Et je passe aux atouts, mais aussi aux défis, aux opportunités. Nous faisons une large place dans ce programme agricole pour la souveraineté alimentaire durable qui se chiffre à 1000 milliards. Une large place au secteur privé et aux investissements directs étrangers pour financer ses besoins. Au Sénégal, les principales opportunités existent dans la production et la commercialisation des semences de qualité, dans le développement d'aménagements hydro-agricoles, dans la création de structures de plateformes de stockage, mais aussi dans la formation et le transfert de compétences. Afin d'attirer les investisseurs, le Sénégal et son agriculture en particulier disposent d'atouts significatifs. Ces atouts sont la stabilité de notre environnement politique et social et l'existence d'institutions fortes. Une position géographique enviable à l'insertion un climat favorable aux productions, mais aussi un climat des affaires favorable avec la facilité de création d'entreprises. Un marché sous-régional qui se développe et une hospitalité légendaire. Voici, mesdames et messieurs, nous espérons que le secteur privé qui nous suit aujourd'hui saisira ces opportunités qui existent au Sénégal. Et je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ndao. It's so exciting to hear what Senegal is doing with regards to water, access to quality seeds, mechanization, some of the fundamentals to really move agriculture and agricultural productivity. I'd like to turn to next to another country which is making great reforms, Lesotho. Mr. Rebonang Makoa, Investment Climate Manager, Reforms Manager of the LNDC. Over to you.
Thank you, Moderator Tora-san. Good morning, everyone, and good evening in Japan, and I think it's good day somewhere else in the world. I'm Rebonang Makoa, as the moderators presented me. I would like to go with a quick presentation next, please. Next slide, please. Which I will cover a few issues in terms of also showing what we are doing, the perspective in terms of where we are thriving as a nation, as a country. So in 2018, we launched the National Strategic Development Plan 2, which prioritizes 4 sectors, agriculture, agro-processing being the pinnacle of the economy. I think the idea here is important, as Senegal has indicated, to migrate our smallholder farmers, our subsistence agricultural and rural economies into more commercial and much more income generating and much more productive food systems. So manufacturing is an important tenet of our economy where we have been doing very well in terms of textiles and apparel and automotive components. We are looking at technology and innovation, bringing in new investments and tourism sector. The LNDC also at the same time launched its new strategic plan for the next 5 years, 2018-2023, which prioritizes agriculture and manufacturing. And I think it's important to also mention that all these things that we're doing as a nation are also anchored on SDGs and the Agenda 2063, African Agenda 2063. So if you look at the slide, you see that we have been doing somehow exports in terms of agriculture to Japan. We have been exporting fish to Japan, trout, and a lot of mostly also apparel. And our trade with Japan is clearly unbalanced, where we import a lot more from Japan than we, which should be true, because Japan is a true industrialized economy. Next slide, please. Next. So we do say we look to attract investments in agriculture. We do say we want to develop our own agriculture sector. And we have done studies where we have unpacked the niche markets, we have unpacked the opportunities being medicinal cannabis, hemp, and these are targeted for specific export markets, being US, EU, China, Japan, even Southern African Customs Union. So organic vegetables, cereals, and grains, spices, and herbs, and Japan is an important economy for us there. We have been participating at FoodX through there and have developed some interesting linkages. Next slide, please. So fruits is another sector that we have been piloting, and it's interesting that you realize that we also have piloted, and we are aware that in some of these deciduous fruits, we have a niche market where we can enter the market before the traditional producers like South Africa and others. So there is a gap in terms of investment there, and we have mapped the land in terms of which land is suitable for that industry. We're looking at game beds, quails, ducks, and everything, particularly looking at the export markets. We're looking at pig and hog production. Asia is also a target market there, and EU as well as Southern African Customs Union. For us, South Africa is an important player in terms of how we work, because even in terms of being landlocked by South Africa, our value chains need to connect so that then the logistics work for us. We are looking at cold and fresh water aquaculture. Like I mentioned, we have been in production of trout for years now. We have projects where we are now looking at Atlantic salmon. So we do think that given the water abundance in Lesotho and the high quality of that water, the high altitude, the cold climate, we are well suited in terms of comparative advantage for organic agriculture, for high niche, high value agricultural products. So how do we see us work with Japan and Japanese businesses? We're looking for investment, and it's important to find the right investment partners that have strong linkages in terms of the logistics, the value chains, development, and market access. Production know-how, the technology that we need. It's important to have agro-processing technology. We are looking at post-harvest infrastructure, packaging, processing, cold chain management. But at the moment, I see time is over, but at the moment, we are also doing some good advancements in terms of developing marketing infrastructure, like developing market centers for smallholder farmers. Thank you very much, moderator.
Thank you so much, Mr. Macau. It's so interesting what Lesotho is doing with regards to cold chain storage, market infrastructure, building on its comparative advantage. So we'd really like to actually thank you for sharing your experience. My next speaker is Mr. Kazuyoshi Morita, the president of Kagome, Senegal. Kagome is a world-renowned company, particularly in tomato paste. We'd like to give the floor to him. Thank you. Mr. Morita, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Once again, I'm honored to be here, and I hope everyone gets some updated information from Kagome Senegal activity, this Third Japan Africa Business Forum. Thank you so much once again. So next slide, please. Okay, so the time is limited only the 5 minutes. So I have to quickly introduce our company profile right now. Kagome, Senegal, established December 2017, around 4 years ago. And our head office located in Dakar, the capital city in Senegal. Senegal is a really wonderful city and amazing country, I think. And our activity area close to the border between the Senegal and Mauritania, because there's a Senegal River, which provide us the great rich water for using the agriculture. And of course, our main product is the tomato, vegetable, and the seedlings. And agriculture service means the machine operation. There are some farmers still using the typical style, but we introduced the technological agriculture to them. Okay, next slide, please. And I needed to show our history before establishment. The Japanese company need many preparation before launching the business. So we started an investigation from 2014, so much more earlier, around 7 years ago. And then that led to the establishment in 2017, by the many investigation year by year from small size to middle size. And still continue our challenge right now. But the point is that why in Senegal reactivity? So there are some reasons, but as I said, the climate in Senegal is amazing. And also the natural resource is great. And Japan and other countries really think about there are some good network like JICA and JET or so on. Next slide, please. And our activity summary is like this. There are 3 points: the processing tomato production. Second thing is a vegetable seedling production. And the last one, third is agriculture service using the machine operation. And our activity calendar is like this. Senegal has 2 different seasons, dry and rainy season. Frankly speaking, it's a bit difficult to active during the rainy season because the plant not to grow well. But I'm now continue to investigate how we improve the productivity during the rainy season and find much more working opportunity to the rural area. Next slide, please. And the point is the Kagome is agricultural company, and we have some techniques for the agriculture. So that is why we are here in Senegal. But I pointed out that we cannot control the climate, but we have many technology to manage the fuel and water, these kind of elements. So of course, we follow the sustainability sort to protect the nature, of course, due to using the irrigation system or saving the fuel like this. And the last point is employment. I'm a Japanese, so sorry, but my idea is I want to work with the local people, the rural area. I want to work with the Senegalese and local people to increase their, of course, the income, but the most important thing, the working opportunity, I think. So next, please. Okay, this is the last slide. Once again, thank you so much, everyone. Merci beaucoup, JABF, the Senegal, the government, and the Japanese company, everyone. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morita, for sharing your experience in Senegal working with local people on sustainable technologies. I'd like to introduce our next panelist. Very happy to introduce Mr. Anish Jain, the Chief Treasury Officer of ETG, which is a global player born in Africa and has actually grown very quickly. Mr. Anish, over to you.
Thank you, merci beaucoup, and good afternoon from Dubai. First of all, it's been an honor to be part of this forum and this session and share and present our views. Um, just to talk about a little bit on ETG, we are an agriculture trading and processing company present in 48 countries globally. More importantly, in sub-Saharan Africa, present in 29 countries and dealing in more than 25 key products, which we source from smallholder farmers and take these products through the value chain to take it to the international markets. Two of the most important objectives of this organization is to uh, realize potential of smallholder farmers and see how we can connect these smallholder farmers to the international markets. And the second is to bring infrastructure into Africa so that the value chain can be enhanced by setting up the logistics network, the warehousing network, and the infrastructure development which enhance the value add activities and job creation within the African economies. So keeping these two large objectives in mind, we work with our internal and external stakeholders to ensure that we bring that kind of development. Please move on to the next slide. I have highlighted some of the 4-5 key initiatives that we keep in mind for creating a sustainable future. The first and foremost, as I mentioned about smallholder farmers, we work with millions of smallholder farmers across sub-Saharan Africa, where we either buy their produce or we sell fertilizers and farm inputs to them so that they can use these inputs to enhance the productivity of their smallholder farms and produce more crops and sell it into the international markets. The second important aspect is job creation, which is linked with infrastructure development. And we feel that when we create processing plants in Africa for agricultural products, it creates those opportunities where we bring us farmers and local people to the mainstream job creation industry. They are not only employed in the processing sector, but it also creates opportunities for them to enhance their income and their livelihood. The third is very important is gender equality, which basically means that bringing more female into the workforce and giving them a fair share of their address. And then creating the parallel and economies, which basically work through the small and mid-size and micro companies, which provide variety of services in supply chain management. Next slide, please. If we talk about the job creation, this is the data which is validated by the World Bank. It says more than 50% of the employment in sub-Saharan Africa is created in agriculture, whereas if you compare it with the developed countries like North America, it is only 1%. So this shows that we are catering to a huge population across Africa, and having such a large arable land in sub-Saharan Africa, there are millions of people who are dependent on agriculture as their livelihood. Moving on to the next page, please. We talk about processing segment. ETG operates more than 80 processing plants across more than 20 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. This not only brings benefits to the farmers, but it also brings benefit in developing the communities, developing their skills, and enhancing the retail output for the local economies. The most important impact is that where thousands of these employment opportunities are created, and also at the same time, the skill development happen in the local sector. Next slide, please. Now talking about the economies and the impact on the local governments, this also helps us to bring the gap between formal economy and the unorganized sector, because having the micro and small enterprises, they really form the backbone of some of these economies across East, Central, and West African countries. They are supported by the local entrepreneurs, and they help to access the markets and bridge the gap between the local farm gate locations to the port cities. Next slide, please. And then the last element is very important, which is how the smallholder farmer is getting impacted, how we are making it sustainable by enhancing their income potential, by giving them opportunities and taking them through the value chain, which will really give benefit in the hands of the farmers. So with this presentation, I would again like to thank the organizers for giving us an opportunity to present the company and the work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anish. This was an excellent presentation showing us the great contribution of ETG on the African continent and the market expansion that is happening. It's really a pleasure to hear about that. My next speaker is Mr. Shakib Jinan from the World Bank, Practice Manager for West and Central Africa. Over to you, Shakib.
Thank you for inviting me to be part of this event. And I would like to focus my presentation on the need of developing food systems that are resilient. Next, please. So what we can see these days is that the per capita food availability is declining in sub-Saharan Africa. And in fact, as of 2019, there is more than 234 million sub-Saharan Africans that are chronically undernourished. And this represents almost some 20% of the population. This decline in per capita food availability is driven by a number of factors, including the population growth and urbanization, including many countries are fragile and have conflicts, which disturbs all the production and the value chains. And also we see more and more impact of the climate change. In fact, if we look at the frequency of the droughts and floods, this has been increasing from once every 12.5 years to once every 2.5 years recently. Next, please. And during the last year, we can see that COVID-19 has exposed the weaknesses in the food system, both on the supply side and also on the demand side. In terms of supply side, we see huge disturbances to the local markets, which is reducing the food availability. We see huge spikes in the food prices. In some countries, we have seen up to 60% of increase in the food prices. And in the demand side, we see also huge income losses, limited remittance coming from foreign countries. And again, this impact on the ability to buy food. We just estimated that for the 2021 to 22, to meet the basic food needs of the additional acutely food insecure people to the COVID, we need some $36 billion. Next, please. So with this in mind, the bank has put in place, and also with other partners, a response to address food and nutrition security into the short term, and also building the food resilience in the medium to long term. So in terms of short-term measures, we are focusing mostly on two areas: food access and nutrition, and also food availability. And here, some examples of investment that we are doing is safety nets, food distribution, trying also to help working with WFP and other UN agencies on the school feeding. We also support small-scale farmers to access agri-input for the next cropping season, and we also try to work on the policy side by working on the policies and the food price monitoring. On the long term, focus is on climate smart agriculture. Focus is also on reducing the drivers of conflict and also by promoting economic development. All this, there is a lot of investment also on early warning for early action, including gender and digital solution. Next, please. So just as an example of a program that is currently being prepared by the bank for covering West Africa is the food system resilience operation, which covering some 10 countries. with an investment of $1.4 billion US. And this program is focusing on improving the sustainability and adaptive capacity of the food system in these countries, also working on agriculture and food crisis prevention and management, also a lot of investment on digital technologies. And the third component is working on market integration and trade. Next, please. So just to conclude my presentation, I would like to stress the need for developing partnership, and this is key to tackle the growing food insecurity in the continent. We are already working with a number of international development organizations, research institutions. This will be key to promote, to fight the current crisis and to limit its impact on the population. It also will be key to meet the SDGs that are soon with us. Thank you, and I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Shakib, for telling us about what you're doing as the World Bank, also with regards to the importance of partnerships, and also what we noted is how grave the issue is with regards to food security. So I'd like to thank all the panelists, really from around the world, with different perspectives as to how we can increase business in Africa. And I'd like to ask a number of questions, and I'd like to go in the order that we did the presentations. First of all, I'd like to turn to our Mr. Ndao from Senegal. Mr. Permanent Secretary, you mentioned, and I was very interested by the title, by your title. It is the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Equipment. We know that mechanization is a huge challenge on the continent. And I'd like to ask you a little bit more with regards to how are you promoting mechanization in Senegal, number one? And number two, we know that Senegal is one of those countries that investors love because of its stability. How are we actually promoting business there? Thank you. Mr. Ndao, please.
Très bien, merci beaucoup. Je commencerai là où vous avez terminé. Pour attirer les investisseurs au Sénégal, nous avons beaucoup d'atouts. J'ai commencé à les citer. D'abord, la stabilité de notre environnement politique et social et l'existence d'institutions fortes, comme vous l'avez dit. Une position géographique enviable à l'intersection des principales routes maritimes et à seulement 5 heures de l'Europe. Un climat favorable aux productions de contre-saison, notamment dans l'horticulture, mais surtout aussi un climat des affaires favorable avec la facilité de création d'entreprises et de codes. Au Sénégal, en un jour, vous pouvez créer votre entreprise. Il y a un code des entreprises vraiment très fiable et qui favorise la création d'entreprises donc dans les plus brefs délais. Et nous avons un code des investissements, code des impôts, du travail qui sont très appropriés à la création d'entreprises. Et enfin, Monsieur, celui qui a présenté son entreprise au Sénégal l'a dit, au Sénégal aussi, il y a une hospitalité légendaire. Maintenant, tous ces atouts font que l'agriculture étant le moteur de notre développement, comme le président de la République l'a dit dans son plan Sénégal émergent, mais la mécanisation joue un rôle important, comme vous avez dit. Et au niveau du Sénégal, après plusieurs réflexions, c'était le ministère de l'Agriculture. Mais la touche particulière que le président de la République, M. Macky Sall, a apportée, c'est aussi de s'élargir sur l'équipement rural. C'est pourquoi maintenant l'intitulé du ministère, c'est le ministère de l'Agriculture et de l'équipement rural. Donc le volet équipement rural constitue un volet très important. Et nous avons même une direction générale donc, qui s'occupe de tout ce qui est équipement. D'abord, nous avons pensé qu'il faut accompagner les petits producteurs qui ont des exploitations familiales, qui ne peuvent pas acheter des tracteurs, c'est-à-dire des équipements motorisés. Il y a un équipement attelé, donc où le petit producteur peut s'acquitter très rapidement avec une subvention donc, de l'État du Sénégal. Ces équipements attelés, comme vous le savez, c'est des chevaux qui les tirent, c'est des ânes, c'est des bœufs. Donc, c'est constitué de semoirs, de houssines, où l'État met en place chaque année un programme pour équiper les petits producteurs. Je rappelle, il y a de cela quelques jours, le président de la République a lancé une campagne d'équipement rural avec 15 822 unités donc attelées. Et là, le paysan ne le paye pas directement. Il y a une banque de la place avec qui le gouvernement du Sénégal a signé un contrat et une convention avec la DER. Là, on donne directement l'équipement rural, c'est-à-dire la machine, etc., au producteur qui va l'utiliser pendant une année, ensuite qui paiera à la banque sous forme de prêt avec une subvention de 60% de l'État. Donc, pour le petit producteur, c'est essentiellement de l'équipement attelé. Mais pour l'agro-business, le Sénégal aussi a fait de grandes avancées sur l'équipement motorisé. Chaque année, c'est un programme que nous développons avec des pays partenaires. Je peux citer le Brésil avec un programme Maïs Alimentos qui nous a permis d'avoir des tracteurs pendant 5 ans d'affilée où on donne aux exploitants qui ont au moins des revenus acceptables et qui pourront payer avec une subvention qui coûte 60 à 100%. Donc voilà le programme agricole concernant l'équipement rural que le président de la République a bien voulu mettre en place. Et nous sommes dans sa 5e année. Aujourd'hui, il ne se trouve pas dans une partie du pays où on ne peut pas retrouver des tracteurs ou bien des semoirs et des houes. Et nous avons aussi pensé à organiser les producteurs en coopérative pour leur permettre d'avoir des tracteurs et qui pourront vraiment faire tout le travail pour beaucoup de villages ou beaucoup d'amont qui pourront être concentrés. Voilà l'expérience que je voulais parler du Sénégal. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Ndao. This is so exciting to hear what you're doing with equipment and the launching of this campaign by His Excellency Macky Sall with regards to the 15,000 units. That should change the landscape for productivity in Senegal. Actually, I was going to go to Lesotho, but maybe I'll just, since we're on the subject of Senegal, I'd like to go to Mr. Morita, actually, and ask Mr. Morita, please. You've heard from Mr. Ndao some of the amazing, strong efforts that the government is making to promote productivity. I'd like to hear a little bit, if you could share your experience. You mentioned that you work with smallholder farmers. Kagome has been in Senegal for a number of years. So where do you see the opportunities for growth from a perspective, and where do you see the challenges, and what can Japanese companies like yours, where is support needed to overcome these challenges?
Thank you, Dao-san and Toda-san. The great question and the presentations. The point is we, the Kagome, has a similar program and activity that we encourage the small farmer to use machine and mechanizing the much more efficient agriculture. And I noticed throughout our activity, the small farmer is struggling many issues. Of course, they probably understand the government's direction or objectives, but they cannot reach the updated informations, and they are, how do I say, they probably didn't notice such kind of an opportunity to get some support from the government and of course from us. So currently Kagome trying to advertise and encourage the small farmer to educate and encourage the using the agricultural system. For example, using the drip irrigation. This is very efficient technique to reduce the water and to be more efficient, not much to workload. Everybody wants the work, but the less workload, it's really ideal situation. And finally, of course, Kagome is a Japanese company, but we don't have enough machine maintenance technique or something. So this opportunity is great to the other Japanese company to introduce their technique and their experience to the Senegal and other African countries to dedicate and to improve the technological agriculture. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morita. Okay, that's very interesting to know that sometimes the smallholder farmers actually don't understand or aren't aware of some of those opportunities. And so I'd like to go back to Mr. Macau of Lesotho. You heard from our colleague, Mr. Ndao from Senegal, of some of the exciting endeavors to help agricultural productivity, some of the challenges from Mr. Morita, actually. Tell us, please, in Lesotho, what is going on with regards to building the business environment specifically? What type of endeavors really help investors to come? And actually, you talked a little bit about logistic infrastructure. We'd like to know a little bit more about some of those policies and infrastructure for Lesotho. Thank you.
Thank you. We have been doing a number of things with the support of the World Bank. I think we'll need to recognize that we also we have a big project where we're partnering also with the African Development Bank. That the big two goals there are business climate improvement, enterprise development, capacity building. Those two projects that we're working on there. So we have been improving in terms of business registration, licensing, and also making it simpler to trade. We have also been developing a small holder and also small businesses, SMEs, and building some areas of our capacity building in terms of innovation and incubation and so on. That's where AFDB has supported us. We've been holding a business plan competition for a while. But then when it comes to agriculture, we have also then, particularly after LNDC and the government prioritized agriculture, we are now have been working in terms of studying the value chains and looking at those value chains that we have key opportunities like I presented earlier. And then also looking at the soft and key physical infrastructure requirements. So even where we need to build new laws, when we need to build new institutions for regulation of specific sectors, like looking at the development of things like market centers, that will then bring in an area, a platform for aggregation and consolidation of smallholder farmers' products. Because the issue is always that retailers and other distributors of fresh produce or fruits and vegetables find it difficult to find farmers because farmers are small and scattered all over the country. But when you have a point where farmers can bring the product and in a consolidated manner, and then you have cold chain management there, then it's easier for buyers to know that they need to go to one place and pick whatever they want to pick. So even if you have 20 small farmers, you are able to then have 1,000 tons of potatoes and tomatoes and so on. By the way, Lesotho has one of the key niche markets for potato seed and high value potatoes because of the soils and the altitude and the climate here. So going organic is quite easy for us. So that's something that we're also looking at. So we have also been studying deciduous fruits with the support of the World Bank again, and since 2008, and we have been producing very well. And we are now also working with the World Bank and IFC in terms of then finding what we can call an anchor investor to expand that. So the issues that also have come forward, they mentioned, the issue has been mentioning of mechanization. I think for us, when mechanization becomes important when you go to field crops like grains, maize, and so on, which is another important part to look at, where in the case of Lesotho, maize is a staple, sorghum is a staple, wheat is a staple. So mechanization is an important part of a commercialization of grains production. But when it comes to horticulture, we find that, yes, mechanization is important, but it's I think on the priority list it would come third. I think like we find that climate smart agriculture is the priority. So you need, for Lesotho it's cold, so we have snow, we have hail, we have some early frost, some hard and heavy frost. So having tunnels, having greenhouse facilities, plastic farming, protected farming, having the right irrigation infrastructure, despite the fact that we know we have water abundance and good quality water, but harvesting that water is a key critical component. So we need to bring in technologies to then harvest that water, have it available, and then make sure that we preserve and use it wisely. So in terms of irrigation infrastructure is important, protected agriculture, climate smart agriculture, those are important in terms of the infrastructure to protect the farms. So those are the things that government has been working on. I think we have, I'll mention the World Bank a number of times and African Development Bank, because we have a number of projects where we're working with them in terms of development of the business environment, enterprise development, and as well as smallholder agricultural development projects. We have another project that we're working on with World Bank and IFAD in terms of smallholder agriculture development. And also as LNDC, we have partnerships with UNDP, the private sector, Standard Lesotho Bank. Interestingly, we're also having another meeting with one private sector party who wants to come up on board on what we call a local supplier development program. Here, the target is to advance smallholder farmers towards adhering to or even complying with standard requirements. So we're working also there with Global Gap to inculcate good agricultural practices with smallholders.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Macau. So many exciting endeavors, and I really appreciate the way that you actually tiered it by different commodities, depending on grains or whether it be horticulture. I'd like to actually use that segue to go to Anish, because I know, as Anish has said, they're a global player in multiple value chains, everything from grains to beans to all kinds of commodities and multiple countries. How does the business enabling environment that Mr. Macau was talking about actually help big companies like ETG? And Anish, if you could just explain a little bit more about the specifications with regards to different commodities when reaching the smallholder farmer. Thank you.
Thank you for this interesting question. I think it is quite important when we look at our landscape across Africa and we see that how each of these countries are different from each other. When we talk about, let's say, a soybean value chain, and we work with JICA and AFDB, both in African continent for across different value chains. So talking about a soybean value chain, it is very different from Southern and Eastern Africa when you compare it to Western Africa or Central Africa. And similarly, when we see different commodities, they have their own pattern, whether it is in terms of smallholder farmers, their outreach, and the quality of crop that they produce. At the same point of time, when we talk about the economic support that is being provided by a variety of organizations locally, as Mr. Macau mentioned, that it is very important to have that kind of an ecosystem in place. It plays a very important role because only one organization such as ETG cannot make a difference. It is always a collective effort which is put by the private organizations, government institutions, and development institutions such as AFDB, JICA, AfriExim, and many other who work in the region. Like we work with IFC for a number of projects across Africa, which allows us to enhance the value chain, which creates the value for the smallholder farmers. And this is done through multiple areas. One, where we are just helping them to offload their produce. And second is to bring their produce for processing plants. I would like to highlight a very important metric here. When we provide warehousing services to farmers where they can bring their crop to us after harvesting and we buy from them and then take it through the supply chain. Now, farmers don't need to really worry about having an international warehouse or a standard warehouse to keep their produce. We all know that post-harvest food loss in Africa used to be 55 to 58% in 1980s and 1990s. And because of the development of infrastructure and warehousing capabilities, we have seen this post-harvest food loss, which is called PHFL, has reduced to 32, 33% in many of these countries. And we feel very excited about it because somewhere in this journey of last 40 years, companies like ETG have played their role in providing that infrastructure where post-harvest food loss can be reduced. Now, again, if you look at second element, which is job creation, a lot of these economies have seen a very high movement or migration of people from rural areas and villages coming to the cities, whereas the city infrastructure is not developed to really cater for that kind of exodus of people. Now, when you create processing plants and when you create infrastructure where farmers and local people can earn income in their local hinterland, it also creates an opportunity where they can earn income at their own village or town, and they are not compelled to migrate to the main cities for looking for opportunities or earn income. So I think this is very important aspect, that while doing all this, you need to remain, your practices should be sustainable in nature, and also importantly, how you include local people into the mainstream workforce, and also create opportunities for women to become part of the workforce. Like, for example, we do a lot of these initiatives where we train local women self-help groups so that they become employable at variety of processing plants, so that they can also become an equal earning member of the family. So I say that these opportunities are very important, and collectively private companies, financial institutions and governments, all three needs to join hands in a fashion that it will create development impact on the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anish. With regards to the partnership that you're talking about, development partners, government, private sector, absolutely critical. It's an excellent segue to Shakib from the World Bank. It's very Mr. Macau from Lesotho mentioned a number of times with regards to the importance of the support that the World Bank is providing, as well as other DFIs. Mr. Anish has mentioned about this importance between this triangle of partners. I'd like to ask you, Shakib, how is the partnership working? How can we promote more private sector from the perspective of DFIs, number one? Number two, what changes do you see with regards to post-COVID in the way we work and what these supply chains look like? And number three, there was mention of climate smart technologies. Are there particular climate smart ways that we should be thinking about to work together better?
Thank you. It's an excellent question. Let me start with the last one. And in fact, the World Bank with other partners is investing a lot to help our client with digital solutions in several areas, varying from selling products to markets. And this is very important now in the case of COVID. Traceability to improve food system, again, critical for the COVID era now. Improving farmers' knowledge and resource use, and also improving access to finance and insurance, and improving public services, the case of e-extension. So on the specific question on the climate resilient technologies, we are working with a number of countries and also companies to promote several technologies, varying from just simple improved drought resistant planting material. The case of, for example, of our colleague, Mr. Morita, on drip irrigation, monitoring and controlling crop irrigation using, for example, smartphones. Also, a number of investment on crop sensors and fertirrigation systems. As I said earlier, on the new operation we are developing for West Africa, huge investment will be on agroclimatical information system for decision making and so on. So quite many technologies are there, and I believe also companies from Japan, play a major role on irrigation, on small-scale mechanization. I know pretty well the technologies that are there in Japan and can be adapted to the case of Africa. So in terms of technologies, there is huge potential. What we should work more in terms of developing the partnership between the public sector, the private sector, and also the development partner is to bring these technologies to the farmers. Example that can be done is demonstration farms, working also with entrepreneurs like Mr. Morita to demonstrate what is there and showcase what can be made, and work also on access to finance to make these technologies available to the small and medium and large farms. So these are elements that are important, and I think from ETG, our colleague mentioned working with IFC, our private sector arm, to make sure that we also develop all the value chains in terms of technologies and also developing the whole supply chain. So I'll stop here and over back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shakib, for sharing some of those climate smart technologies and also the great work that the World Bank Group is doing across the continent. This panel has been just amazing. So many different perspectives and so many efforts, initiatives for growth on the African continent, for business, for agriculture, for feeding the African population. I was really happy to hear what Mr. Ndao mentioned with regards to Plan Émergent du Sénégal, the campaign for agricultural equipment mechanization. Mr. Morita mentioned that maintenance is extremely important, and working with the smallholder farmers, demonstrating the technologies that are sustainable, so critical. Mr. Macau mentioned cold chain technologies, aggregation of all these aggregation infrastructure is absolutely critical. Of course, we're also looking at what ETG is doing in terms of post-harvest loss, the opportunities for creating jobs on the African continent, one of the most critical agendas for the youth population, as well as women. And Shakib mentioned a number of climate smart technologies, which Japanese companies can also play a role. With that, dear panelists, I would like to ask you to just say in one word or one phrase what you see as the opportunity for growth for business in Africa. Please know that you have the ambassadors of Africa here listening to you. You have Japanese companies that are interested and really wanting more business intelligence about Africa. So if I could just ask each panelist to say one phrase with regards to building African business, to building business opportunities, that would be excellent. So please let me start as I see it. Now I'll go in the same order. Monsieur Ndao.
Merci beaucoup, Madame, pour cette modération de qualité. Je voudrais juste dire que le Sénégal est un beau pays où il fait bon vivre. Nous avons une tradition légendaire d'hospitalité. Nous avons une ouverture sur l'océan. Nous avons de grandes terres, le soleil en permanence. Donc voilà, beaucoup d'opportunités que nous avons pour que les investisseurs japonais puissent venir. Et je rappelle aussi que nous travaillons depuis plusieurs années avec la JICA, la coopération japonaise, avec qui nous aide dans beaucoup de domaines, notamment dans l'irrigation. Et nous avons aussi un programme qui s'appelle un programme CHEP, qui a été développé dans la zone des Niayes, avec une irrigation de haute facture. Et c'est pourquoi véritablement la coopération japonaise et le Sénégal, c'est une coopération dynamique. Et je voudrais vraiment inviter les investisseurs, les uns et les autres, à venir s'installer au Sénégal parce que le climat est très favorable. Et je voudrais aussi remercier très sincèrement notre ambassadeur, l'ambassadeur du Sénégal au Japon, qui a servi véritablement de facilitateur et de coordinateur pour ce panel. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. Mr. Morita. Sorry, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, once again, merci beaucoup, Ndao, and thank you so much for everyone once again. My word is challenge for long vision, with long vision like this. So because when we established the company, there are so many challenges, of course, different culture, but luckily the Senegal has a great nature and a great culture, and the people is nice. So we continue to challenge to expand our sustainable agriculture for Senegal, and for the future, of course, to the Africa with Japanese company. Thank you so much once again. That's all.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Morita. Mr. Macau.
Thank you. Allow me to say that Africa is the new global leader, and this is not just in terms of population growth and the potential of future population in terms of young population, but Africa also still is the largest arable land potential globally. Therefore, Africa stands to hold, is still holding a lot of global food production potential. So we need to then bring in the right investments, the right partnerships. We in Lesotho now, we are emphasizing the importance of partnerships with rural economy, where as in Africa, land is held by communities, held and rural and people who are now having nothing but that land. So we always say partner with them than buy land from them, but give them shareholding or some sort of partnership where then you enable them, invest in rural communities, invest in youth. So we always talk about making agriculture the new cool youth thing than tech. And yes, tech is important for marketing, for making business easier. There's nothing better. Yeah, so in that, I need to also thank you, moderator Dr. San. Thank my fellow moderators from ETG, Mr. Anish. I wish to have a few more discussions with him. I hope that will Mr. Morita, Mr. Ndao from Senegal. I think maybe soon when COVID goes away, we will visit each other and see what we can learn from each other. Mr. Janine, all the best, and thank you for all the support. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Macau. We'll have to organize something. Mr. Anish.
Thank you. If I have to sum up, I always call Africa as the future store. And why I call it, because with the large population and growing population, it is really a land of opportunities for companies which are working across the sectors and industries, whether it is manufacturing, agribusiness, financial services, information technology. There is a scope for all kind of services or businesses in Africa. It's all about, business is all about making right partnerships and connection. So I will highly encourage Japanese companies who are looking into African continent, they should try establishing right partnerships with those companies, with those players who have local knowledge of the ground, who help them execute right strategies and achieve success. In case of ETG, we are blessed to have a shareholder and a strategic partner like Mitsui, which is one of the large Japanese conglomerate, and help us expand our plans in Africa. And I would encourage a lot of other Japanese companies to also look these opportunities and form right partnerships. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anish. Okay, last but not least, Shakib, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So let me to be brief and say that Africa has huge potential, offers many opportunities. In fact, if I look at the agriculture sector, even during the COVID, it's one of the most resilient sector and has kept many economies afloat. So by investing on climate smart technologies, investing on domestic processing, I fully agree with ETG and other colleagues this is the place to be. Of course, it's a long-term investment, but also it's a huge reward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shaki. Thank you so much, panelists. What an excellent conversation, and really giving us optimism and really having a positivity with regards to business, investment, agriculture. Thank you so much. So we're going to move to the next session, which will be a session with the audience now. I'd like to ask the moderator to put up the presentation. Over to the moderator, please. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to make a very, very brief presentation with regards to agricultural transformation, the inclusive, sustainable, resilient food systems. Really, actually, the panelists have said it all. So I will make mine as brief as possible. Next slide, please. As Shakib was mentioning in his report also, there is an intricate link between COVID-19, poverty, economic growth, and health. So actually, as Shakib was mentioning, there has been an increase in poverty, and this is extremely worrying particularly for food insecurity. Next slide, please. Now, with regards to the African food market, dear ambassadors, dear audience, dear partners, you've heard it from the panelists. Actually, the African food market is roughly about worth 750 billion US dollars in 2021. And so we're looking at an increase of about we're looking at a food market of about 1 trillion US dollars in the next 5 years. So the market in Africa, as Mr. Anish was mentioning, is expected to grow much faster than in other continents of the world. Now, the challenges include that per capita consumption is a bit lower, but because of the growing population, because of urbanization, because of changes in consumer demands, it is expected that this demand for food will grow by 60% more than today's levels. So, as was mentioned by the panel previously, this is a market where one has to be persistent, one has to be patient, but being there, having a footprint, understanding the business in Africa is absolutely critical for the future. Next slide, please. With regards to the African Development Bank, alongside partners like the World Bank and other DFIs, we are working on a transformation agenda called Feed Africa. And this strategy, and I was very happy to hear from Mr. Macao, the strategy is very much specific to different value chains and what different agroecological zones actually can provide. Next slide, please. So when it comes to priorities for building resilience, we know that the domestic food markets are growing fast. We need the technologies that businesses can bring, really. And this is where Mr. Morita, the work that Kagome is doing, for example, in countries like Senegal, is so important. We do believe that post-COVID-19 and into the recovery, there will be a kind of multipolarism whereby global value chains will continue to grow, but there will be a reconfiguration whereby processing post-harvest will be happening much closer to production. And as much as logistic infrastructure and logistic networks are very important, what's going to be a new trend, and we're really looking at this very carefully, is the collaboration intra-Africa. I'm sure the audience has been discussing about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, but this is a very important endeavor where the commitment for African intra-regional trade is there. Now it's just about operationalization. And there are regions in Africa, particularly along the Eastern African corridor and the Southern African area, where trade is already happening informally and growing. So for African governments and dear ambassadors, please, the prioritization, as Mr. Anish was saying, of agro-industrialization is so important. As Mr. Ndao was saying, also in this context, mechanization is absolutely critical. So with that, next slide, please. Some discussion points that we'd like to ask our next speakers to go into are: what are the constraints to realize this inclusive, sustainable, resilient food system in your countries? How can those constraints be addressed? What are the technologies that are so important? I'd just like to highlight again, as the panelists were saying, medium to long-term perspective, focus on the growth opportunities, and let's make a conducive environment for private sector to thrive. My last slide, next slide, is just some photos from Uganda, from Cote d'Ivoire, Gabon, Ghana. These are some of the informal markets that we see on the African continent. As was mentioned by Mr. Anish, women, youth, extremely important, lots of jobs to be made there. Last slide, please. Thank you very much for listening. Okay, so I'd like to go straight to our next panel of speakers. I'd like to start off with His Excellency, Mr. Pierre Nzege. I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, the Ambassador of the Republic of Cameroon. Over to you.
Thank you, Tauda-san. As an introduction, and to save time, I just want to associate myself with the opening remarks made yesterday by our Dean, Ambassador Stefanos, and my good brother and colleague, Ambassador Mohamed Rashad Boula. Now, let me just go straight to the point and try to answer the question you raised. The first one is, what are the constraints to realize inclusive, sustainable, and resilient food system in your country? Second, how those constraints could be addressed? And then what technologies are particularly important to fill the gaps mentioned above? Okay, as I already explained, I'm not intervening as the Cameroon ambassador, but as a representative of Central Africa. Therefore, I just want to tackle, the first question, the constraint. And as you know, Cameroon being a bilingual country, let me turn to French now. Il y a beaucoup de contraintes, en fait, de développement des systèmes alimentaires dans notre sous-région. Et je voudrais seulement en prendre quelques-uns qui ont d'ailleurs été mentionnés, n'est-ce pas, par les intervenants dans le cadre de la discussion générale. Je prends par exemple le faible investissement dans les ressources humaines et relativement dans la recherche agricole, l'accès limité aux ressources productives pour les petits producteurs vulnérables, notamment les femmes et les jeunes, les difficultés d'accès au marché pour les petits producteurs du fait des imperfections du marché régional, les difficultés d'accès au crédit et autres services financiers destinés aux petits producteurs et la faible capacité formative et d'apprentissage des professionnels et des exploitants agricoles. Voilà en gros, mesdames et messieurs, chers collègues, chers amis, n'est-ce pas, les contraintes que nous pouvons relever. Maintenant, la deuxième question qui nous a été posée, c'est quelles sont les solutions et propositions d'action. Eh bien, il faut dire que la Banque africaine de développement fait déjà un travail formidable dans ce secteur, comme il a été mentionné, n'est-ce pas, par certains orateurs qui m'ont précédé. Alors, je voudrais seulement prendre, n'est-ce pas, quelques solutions. Mais pour cela, je devrais d'abord dire que l'ambition de la BAD est de nourrir l'Afrique. Et pour cela, elle prend en compte la nécessité d'intégrer plus de 300 millions de personnes d'ici à 2050. Et dans des systèmes alimentaires, tout en appuyant le développement de plus de 190 millions d'hectares pour une productivité soutenue de l'agriculture, y compris l'agriculture familiale. Alors, en termes de solutions, puisque nous n'avons que 5 minutes, il y a d'abord la disposition d'une main-d'œuvre productive et de bonne santé. Donc, il y a les problèmes de Covid, n'est-ce pas? Il y a l'appui à la reconstruction et le relèvement des agriculteurs vulnérables. Et enfin, je devrais dire, en prenant en compte l'innovation pour combler l'offre et la demande des produits alimentaires. Mesdames et messieurs, en 5 minutes, il n'est pas possible de présenter tous les problèmes, toutes les solutions. C'est pour ça que je ferai circuler, n'est-ce pas, mon exposé plus tard et je suis disposé à répondre à toutes les questions. Je vous remercie.
Your Excellency Pierre Nzenge, thank you so much for representing Central Africa and also keeping time. We really look forward to the circulation of some of the solutions and challenges you mentioned. My next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Jerome Ploweya, Ambassador of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire. Your Excellency.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Permettez-moi de féliciter les organisateurs de ce forum, notamment la BAD et les ambassadeurs africains à Tokyo. Ma présentation portera sur l'exemple de la CEDEAO pour nourrir l'Afrique. Les 2 diapositives que vous allez voir concernent mon plan et un aperçu de la CEDEAO. Suivant. Suivant. Alors, pour nourrir l'Afrique, les chefs d'État de la CEDEAO se sont réunis à Accra, au Ghana, en 2005, pour établir une politique agricole commune appelée ECOWAS. Cette politique consiste à permettre une agriculture moderne et durable, ainsi que la promotion des entreprises agricoles grâce à l'implication du secteur privé. Elle consiste également à contribuer de manière durable à la satisfaction des besoins alimentaires de la population de la région et à la réduction de la pauvreté dans les États membres. Suivant. 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 Pour atteindre cet objectif, ECOWAS a plusieurs actes d'intervention. Il s'agit entre autres de l'amélioration de la productivité et de la compétitivité de l'agriculture. Suivant. Oui, ces actes d'intervention ont permis aux États de la CEDEAO d'avoir des acquis importants. Entre autres, l'accroissement de la mobilisation des ressources internes et externes en faveur de l'agriculture, l'augmentation de la production agricole, suivant, l'accroissement des échanges entre les pays de la région, l'amélioration de la sécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle, suivant, et la mise en place des dispositifs institutionnels de gouvernance, suivant. Et ça, vous avez les dispositifs de la gouvernance, suivant. Comme vous pouvez le constater, l'ECOWAS a permis des avancées notables concernant toute la chaîne de valeur alimentaire, à savoir la production, la transformation, la distribution, la commercialisation et autres. Bien sûr, il y a des acquis, mais aussi il y a des défis. Suivant. Ces défis sont, entre autres, assurer la sécurité de la souveraineté alimentaire et couvrir les besoins nutritionnels de la région, moderniser les exploitations familiales, promouvoir les systèmes productifs durables et adaptés au changement climatique, et structurer et développer les chaînes de valeur efficientes à forte densité d'emploi. Suivant. Pour relever ces défis, la CEDEAO, à travers l'ECOWAP, devrait explorer et identifier des domaines de coopération avec le Japon. Cela nous amène à parler des perspectives de coopération entre les États de la CEDEAO et le Japon. Ces domaines pourraient être, entre autres, explorer les possibilités de coopération technique et scientifique en matière agricole avec le Japon. Suivant. Établir des partenariats publics-privés mutuellement avantageux entre les deux parties. Suivant. Et susciter la création des joint ventures entre PME ouest-africaines et japonaises en vue de promouvoir de nouvelles technologies pour le développement de la chaîne de valeur des produits agricoles. Suivant. Mesdames et messieurs, pour conclure, je voudrais dire que pour atteindre son objectif, qui lui est assigné, à savoir éradiquer la faim d'ici 2025, l'ECOWAP devra permettre aux États membres de doubler la productivité par l'utilisation de techniques comme l'irrigation, la mécanisation et l'innovation technologique. L'ECOWAP devrait également encourager les États membres à établir des partenariats inclusifs avec les investisseurs étrangers tels que ceux du Japon afin de renforcer la chaîne des valeurs des produits agricoles. Et comme a dit mon prédécesseur, en 5 minutes, on ne peut pas tout dire. Et les documents sont à votre disposition, également des annexes qui concernent tous les 15 plans de développement agricole de chaque État membre de la CEDEAO. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency Jérôme Weah. We really look forward for the presentation to be circulated. Extremely useful information. Next presenter, I would like to call upon His Excellency Mr. Rashad Boulad, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Morocco. Thank you. Over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Toda-san. My presentation will focus on food security. Africa is the second most populated continent with an estimated population of 1.3 billion. This number will reach 2.4 billion by 2050, representing 26% of the global population. The challenge facing Africa is therefore food security. To face this challenge, fertilizers play a key role. Aware of this challenge, African Union adopted in 2006 the Abuja Declaration, which recommends to double the use of fertilizers from 22 kilograms per hectare to 50 kilograms per hectare. As you know, the main component to produce fertilizers is phosphate. Morocco is the largest phosphates exporter worldwide, and OCP Group, a public entity, created in 2016 a subsidiary dedicated to the African continent called OCP Africa. OCP Africa is present in 12 African countries. Its action in these countries focuses on farmers' needs through 2 dedicated tools. The OCP School Lab, a mobile soil laboratory, which provides free soil testing in order to recommend the appropriate fertilizer. Second, the Agri Booster is a mechanism to connect the farmers to financing and insurance. It also provides training for proper use of fertilizer. OCP Africa is also assisting these countries in infrastructure and logistics by providing storage facilities to farmers. In addition, the Kingdom has built the Africa Fertilizers Complex in Joflasfar on Morocco's Atlantic coast, which annual production of 1 million tons is totally dedicated to sub-Sahara countries. Morocco provides also technical assistance to Senegal, Benin, Côte d'Ivoire, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea in creating and maintaining irrigated zones with a special focus on rational use of water resources. This bilateral cooperation covers the insemination of clouds to induce rainfall using satellite imagery and aerial technology. The Kingdom of Morocco has also developed strategic partnerships with Ethiopia, Nigeria, Gabon, and Rwanda. With Ethiopia, my country is building a fertilizer plant for an investment of $3.7 billion. This platform will produce fertilizers based on potash and gas from Ethiopia and phosphoric acid from Morocco. OCP School Lab and AgriBooster are already contributed in boosting the yield of maize. With Nigeria, Morocco is developing an industrial platform for an investment of $1.5 billion, which will utilize Nigerian gas and Moroccan phosphate to produce 750,000 tons of ammonia and 1 million tons of fertilizers by 2025. The project includes the development of a distribution network. With Gabon, Morocco has signed an agreement for the construction of twin plants, one in Gabon and one in Morocco, combining Moroccan phosphates and Gabonese natural gas with an investment of $2.3 billion. The total production capacity will be around 2 million tons intended to the African market. With Rwanda, a fertilizer plant worth $38 million is under construction to blend 100,000 tons of fertilizers. This partnership also involves the delivery of 2 state-of-the-art soil analysis laboratories, including a mobile one. On a multilateral level, Morocco and FAO signed an agreement to train African experts in processing satellite and drone imagery in addition to data analysis. I would like to conclude by mentioning that there are many opportunities for Japanese companies in vegetables, fruits, and fish processing, packaging, dairy farming, water management, fisheries resources, and poultry farming. Japanese companies are more than welcome. The embassy and the Moroccan agency in charge of investments are at their disposal for any kind of assistance they might need. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Rashad. Thank you so very much. I'd like to introduce the next speaker, who will be Her Excellency, Madam Tabu Irina, Ambassador of the Republic of Kenya.
Thank you, Ms. Toda. Africa's future depends on a healthy population and an economy that is resilient to negative shocks, such as the effects of climate change, global fluctuations in food prices, and the effects of pests and disease that continue to constrain and destabilize Africa's efforts towards providing food and nutrition security. Agriculture is a key driver of growth in African economies. It is also a major source of income in Africa, supporting more than 60% of the people in the rural areas. It contributes an average of about 15% of African GDP and about 30% of the GDP of most African countries. Despite this, Africa has a huge untapped potential, including holding about 65% of the world's uncultivatable arable land. Consequently, Africa has remained a food deficit continent, yet it has the potential to feed the entire world. With the 65% of uncultivatable arable land, Africa's agricultural transformation is not only key to resolving Africa's food deficit challenge, but can also have a huge bearing on the world's food and nutrition security. In Kenya, agriculture remains the bedrock of development of our nation and the key to creating equitable and sustainable growth for our people. It contributes to 31% of the GDP, employs more than 40% of the total population, and 70% of the rural population, and provides 60% of exports, with the largest contribution coming from crop production. Despite this impressive performance in agriculture, Kenya's agricultural productivity is below potential due to a number of challenges, such as performance ranging from low productivity, poor agricultural infrastructure, disease and pest attack, the high cost of inputs, and over-dependence on rain-fed agriculture, among others. The government of Kenya has developed some clear policy responses, many of them presented as investment opportunities to address these challenges. These opportunities are identified and prioritized through PPP arrangements and include large-scale irrigation, agricultural modernization and mechanization, agro and food processing hubs, development of agricultural infrastructure, local production of fertilizers, which we've been assisted and remain grateful to Toyota Tsushu for their contribution. Through these investments, Kenya hopes to address the key challenges that constrain the agricultural sector and hence achieve 100% food and nutrition security, thus contributing to the overall realization of the SDGs in the country by 2030. However, with the challenges and disruptions of COVID-19 pandemic, Kenya, like many countries in the world, will need to do more in terms of measures that will make the food system more resilient, inclusive, efficient, sustainable, and healthy, especially to the vulnerable communities whose situations has even worsened amid the pandemic. Thank you very, very much for your attention. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Very nice. Thank you. Arigatou gozaimashita to you also. I'd like to introduce our last speaker today, Mr. Domingos Gove, Director of the Directorate of Food, Agriculture, and Natural Resources of SEDEC. Over to you, please, Domingos.
Good day. My name is Domingos Gove, and I will be speaking on behalf of SADC Secretariat, but equally the SADC region, which includes the honorable ambassadors in Japan. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this will be the brief context of my presentation, addressing the 4 topics that are here. Next slide. Next slide, please. In terms of the relevant policy, as it was indicated by my previous speaker, we are implementing, the framework includes the Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan 2020-2030 that was approved in August 2020, but also includes agriculture is fully part of the SADC industrialization strategy and roadmap 2063, which follows the African process. And the main element that drives the implementation of agriculture in our region is regional agriculture policy, but also includes protocols in different areas. And also the agriculture is fully guided by the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, CADAP, which is being fast-tracked by the Malabo Declaration. And actually, the regional agriculture policy is the SADC CADAP Compact. We are also implementing the African Union Agenda 2063 and the SDGs. In terms of the regional agriculture policy objectives, we are pursuing 4 objectives, namely increased production, productivity, and competitiveness. I think this was also indicated by the previous speaker, the Honorable Ambassador from Cameroon. Increase the regional and international trade and market access for agriculture products, reduce social and economic vulnerability, and engagement of private and public sector in value chains. Next slide, please. In terms of the challenges mainly associated to COVID-19, as everyone is aware, the COVID-19 affected movement of people to minimize the infections. And these included the closure or limited cross-border transport among the SADC regions, which disrupted supply chains, including food supplies, and also agriculture inputs like seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, etc. But also within the countries, the lockdowns that restricted the movement of people, including the closure of factories and urban markets. These had impact on the availability of food for the producer and consumer markets, and affected obviously negatively the agriculture production, distribution, and food and nutrition and security, particularly vulnerable populations. from the assessment that we have done in SADC area, the COVID so far has not affected production as such, because when it started, the production season was over. Eventually, with this extension of the COVID, obviously it will affect production. But the main effect of COVID was in food and nutrition security for the region. And this is coming with a huge impact of the climate change, mainly drought, where we have around 51 million people affected by food insecurity. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. In terms of mitigating COVID measures, we are maintaining, the region has agreed to maintain inter-regional trade in essential commodities, also considering agriculture-related areas as essential service that would be safe during the lockdowns, provision of incentives for safeguarding the current crop harvest, and also expanding social safety nets and social protection programs. In terms of the regional programs and project investments, we have the Regional Agriculture Investment Plan 2017-2022. The total cost of the Regional Agriculture Investment Plan is around 1.3 billion. And this is an area that it's provided for Japan to invest. We have the area of crop development program, which includes seeds, pesticides, fertilizers, irrigation. We have the area of agro-processing. In the livestock, we have the area of investment in livestock value chains. We have also in the area of aquaculture production, where we expect to rise from 100,000 tons now to 350 by 2030. And we have identified already regional agriculture value chains. So basically, this is my presentation. I'm sorry I was not following the presentation out in Japan because it was freezing. So I'm reading from my own presentation. Asanteni sana, merci beaucoup, muito obrigado. Thank you very much, arigato.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gobe. You are a polyglot. You can speak many languages. Thank you so much for the excellent presentation. I'm going to see if there are any burning questions or comments from the floor. We have a very limited time left, but from the audience, if you would like to have a question or comment, and I'd like to ask you to keep it brief, if you could raise your hands or turn on your mic, please. Please use the raise your hand function if you would have any questions, Your Excellencies, or comments. Okay, do I see a hand raised? Lulama Smuts Ngoyama, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Without wasting time, I would like to acknowledge the presence of all the excellencies and the leadership of the bank. My question is, Africa scores poorly on all indicators regarding food security and nutrition targets. For example, in 2015, only 18 out of 54 African countries have reached the MDG 1C hunger target. How do we improve these targets, especially with regard to nutrition targets for Africa? It is a very big challenge, and therefore we need to do something about it. That's my basic question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lulama, for that excellent question. I'm going to turn it over to the panelists to see if anybody would like to answer that question. I also see His Excellency, Mr. Rashad, has his hand up. Mr. Rashad, would you like to answer that question or add comments?
No, I would like to add comments.
Please.
There is one issue also that is one of the constraints and things that we have to tackle. I talked about fertilizers, but water management is also a key issue. You cannot have good agriculture or productive agriculture if you don't do a good water management. And I think this is also a sector in which Japanese investments can play a great role. There is plenty of water in Africa, and ways to use it can be a big challenge, and I'm sure that Japanese companies can play a role in this.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I'd like to then ask the panelists if anybody would like to react to Mr. Lulama's question with regards to reaching some of these targets. Okay, well, let me try to, yes, please, Mr. Gove.
Yes, I think we are trying to move, but not at the pace that is needed in taking into account the growth of the population. But there are a number of areas that have been, some of them they have been addressed in the last panel, which includes the challenge that we are facing is inadequate funding. There is inadequate infrastructure. If you're looking, for example, the SADC region or if even the African continent, if we want to boost agriculture, we have to really improve the agriculture. There is a component that is extremely critical also, which includes research and technology. In a changing world, this is very key. And I think the issue of digitalization of the economy, COVID-19 has come to show that this is the only way. So those are the aspects that we really have to address if we want to transform the agriculture. In other words, not just looking at the food production, but as an economic activity that will have impact in the social and economic development of the region. I submit.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gove. Thank you for answering that question. And I think it's an excellent segue with regards to summarizing the conversation. As our panelists mentioned, Mr. Pierre Nzege, who was representing not only Cameroon, but Central Africa, the youth population, innovation, so very important and underpinning everything we do with regards to reaching some of the targets that were mentioned. What was very exciting today is also to hear from His Excellency, Mr. Jerome Weah, as well as Mr. Dominguez Gove, with regards to how Japanese investors can partner with regions like ECOWAS, like SADC, and what these regions are doing to invite Japanese investors and businesses in general to larger markets where you have a larger remit of production, processing, as well as markets. I was very impressed with the presentation of His Excellency, Mr. Rashad Boulal, with regards to what Morocco is doing with the private sector in areas like fertilizer, and also his concern with regards to water management is very well noted. And finally, as Her Excellency, Madame Tabu Irina was mentioning, so important to partner with the private sector. So on that positive note, I would like to close the session, really thank the panelists for the excellent presentations, which we would all like to share, and also for helping us to understand what are some of the opportunities, solutions for the African continent that are so concrete in your countries and in the regions. This is going to change the future towards the Africa we want. Thank you very much. And over back to the moderator. Thank you.
戸田様、大使閣下の皆様、ありがとうございました。以上をもちまして、セッション2、アフリカの食料増産を終了させていただきます。次のセッション3、アフリカの工業化は、明日7月1日の日本時間17時から開催いたします。ぜひご参加ください。また、本日の動画も本プログラム終了後はアーカイブとしてご視聴いただけます。プルダウンメニューから本日の日付、セッションとご希望の言語を選択しご視聴ください。本フォーラム終了後、アンケートがポップアップで表示されます。ぜひアンケートへのご協力をお願い申し上げます。すぐのご回答が難しい場合は、後ほどイベントページの右上にありますクリップボードのマークをクリックいただくと、アンケート一覧が表示されますので、そちらよりご回答をお願いいたします。また、本セッションと並行してオンラインビジネスマッチングが7月16日まで行われております。 一般視聴者としてご参加の方で、ビジネスマッチングに参加をご希望の方は、JABF 事務局までご連絡ください。本日はご参加いただきまして、誠にありがとうございました。